The warning came not with sirens or alarms, but with silence. The kind of silence that grips a space station when every communication channel goes dead at once. Captain stood in the command center of Meridian Station, watching the holographic display flicker and die. Around her, technicians frantically worked their consoles, their faces painted blue by emergency lighting. "Ma'am, we're being hailed," communications officer reported, his voice tight with tension. "It's the Galactic Assembly." His jaw clenched. The Assembly never contacted individual human stations directly. They dealt with Earth's government, treating humanity like unruly children who needed constant supervision. Put it through. The main screen shimmered to life, revealing a being that easy description. The ambassador possessed a crystalline structure that caught and refracted light in impossible ways, creating rainbow patterns that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, the translation matrix struggled to convert its harmonic frequencies into words humans could understand. "Attention, human installation. By decree of the Galactic Assembly, your species has been found guilty of violations against the Cosmic Peace Accords. Effective immediately, humanity is expelled from all Assembly territories and protections." Felt her blood turn to ice. "What violations? We followed every protocol, every agreement." "Your species' aggressive expansion, your military buildup, your refusal to surrender planetary defense systems. These actions constitute preparation for warfare against member species." The being's form pulsed with what had learned to recognize as dismissive superiority. "You have 72 Earth hours to evacuate all human presence from Assembly space. Any human vessels or installations remaining after this deadline will be destroyed." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Stared at the blank screen, her mind racing. 3 days to evacuate not just Meridian Station, but every human outpost, research facility, and trading station scattered across 50 light-years of space. It was impossible. "Get me Admiral Harrison on Earth," she ordered. "Emergency protocols." As work to establish the connection, walked to the observation deck. Through the reinforced, she could see the vast expanse of space that had been humanity's home for 3 generations. Meridian Station orbited a resource-rich asteroid field in the 442 system, one of 12 human colonies outside Earth's solar system. They'd built these outposts with Assembly permission, following their laws, paying their taxes, contributing to their scientific databases. And now they were being thrown out like unwanted guests. The crackled to life, showing Admiral Harrison's weathered face. The old man looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. "I assume you got the same message we did." "Yes, sir, this is insane. We've done nothing to warrant expulsion." Harrison's expression darkened. "That's where you're wrong. We've done plenty. We've grown too strong, too fast. We've developed technology they don't understand. We've refused to hand over our defense networks. In their eyes, we're becoming a threat." Felt a chill run down her spine. "Sir, are you saying we actually are preparing for war?" "I'm saying we're preparing to survive, and the Assembly has decided that's the same thing." Harrison leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I'm about to tell you something that's classified at the highest levels. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected massive fleet movements in Assembly space. Ships being recalled from border sectors, defensive positions being reinforced. They're preparing for something big." "Against who?" "Against us. They've been planning this expulsion for months, maybe years. This ultimatum isn't spontaneous anger, it's the opening move of a larger strategy." His hands gripped the console edge so hard her knuckles went white. "What are our options?" "Officially, we comply. We evacuate our citizens and hope they let us retreat to Earth system in peace." Harrison's eyes hardened. "Unofficially, we implement Protocol Exodus." Had heard whispers of Protocol Exodus in classified briefings, but she'd never seen the actual plans. It was rumored to be humanity's ultimate contingency plan, something so radical that even discussing it could be considered treason. "Sir, I need clarification on." "No, you don't, not yet. For now, begin evacuation procedures, make it look like we're complying fully." But Harrison's voice took on a tone she'd never heard before, part desperation and part steel. "Start transferring all critical data to the deep storage vaults, everything. Research files, manufacturing specifications, genetic databases, cultural archives. If we're being cast out of the galaxy, we're not going empty-handed." The transmission ended, leaving alone with her thoughts. Around her, the station buzzed with activity as her crew began the monumental task of preparing for evacuation. But even as they worked, his mind was elsewhere, thinking about the implications of Harrison's words. If humanity was truly being expelled from galactic civilization, they would need more than just the clothes on their backs and whatever ships they could manage to escape in. They would need knowledge, technology, and above all, they would need a plan. Over the next 18 hours, watch the greatest exodus in human history unfold. Ships arrived from across the sector, cargo haulers, passenger liners, even private yachts, anything that could carry people and equipment. The sight was both inspiring and heartbreaking. Families torn from homes they'd known for generations, scientists forced to abandon research that had taken decades to develop, children who had never seen Earth preparing for a journey to a world they'd only heard about in stories. But it was the other activities that truly captured attention. The classified shipments that arrived under heavy guard, the sealed containers that required special handling procedures, the mysterious personnel who came aboard carrying authorization codes she'd never seen before. Captain approached her during a brief lull in the evacuation. "I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from Cargo Bay 7. Should I investigate?" "No," replied quickly. "That bay is under Admiral Harrison's direct authority. Focus on the civilian evacuation." Nodded and returned to his station, but could see the questions in his eyes. She had the same questions herself. What exactly was being loaded onto the evacuation ships? And why did she get the feeling that humanity's expulsion from the galaxy was about to become something much more significant than a simple retreat? Her answer came 6 hours later when a priority message arrived from Earth. Not through normal channels, but through the quantum communication network that was supposed to be used only for absolute emergencies. The message was brief and coded, but understood its meaning immediately. Protocol Exodus is now active. Prepare for Phase 2 implementation. Maintain operational security at all costs. Deleted the message and stood up from her command chair. Around her, the evacuation continued, but she knew that what was happening on Meridian Station was being replicated across every human outpost in assembly space. They weren't just evacuating, they were preparing for something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. As the last civilian transport departed Meridian Station, made her way to Cargo Bay 7. The massive space was nearly empty now, but the energy readings had detected were stronger than ever. She could feel them humming through the deck plates beneath her feet. "Impressive, isn't it?" a voice said behind her. Spun around to see Dr. Sarah, Earth's top, and one of the most classified researchers in human space. Had seen her file once, filled with so many redacted sections that it looked like a piece of abstract art. "Doctor, I wasn't aware you were aboard." "Few people are. I arrived with the last priority shipment." Doctor gestured toward the empty bay. "What you felt earlier was the activation of something we've been working on for 15 years. Something the Assembly forced us to keep secret, and something that's about to ensure humanity's survival." "I don't understand." Doctor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You will. In about 47 hours, when the Assembly deadline expires and they discover that humanity didn't retreat to Earth as expected, they're going to learn that casting us out was the biggest mistake in galactic history." Felt a chill run down her spine. What did we do? "We did what humans do best, Captain. We adapted, we survived, and we prepared for the day when we'd have to stand on our own." Doctor's eyes gleamed with something between excitement and fear. "The galaxy cast us out, Captain, but what they don't realize is that they just freed us from the chains that were holding us back." As if summoned by her words, the final evacuation alarm sounded throughout the station. Looked around the empty cargo bay one last time, then followed Doctor toward the docking ports where the last ships waited to carry them away from the only home humanity had ever known among the stars. But as they walked, couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't retreating at all. They were regrouping, and when humanity returned to the galaxy, it would be on their own terms. The last human ship departed Meridian Station 36 hours before the assembly deadline. As watched the station shrink behind them, she wondered if the galaxy had any idea what it had just unleashed. Humanity had spent 3 generations playing by the Assembly's rules, accepting their place as junior members of galactic civilization. Those days were over. The ship's course was set for the edge of Assembly space. but knew their real destination lay far beyond any star chart. They were heading into the unknown, carrying with them secrets that would either ensure humanity's survival or guarantee their extinction. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. The coordinates Doctor provided led them beyond the edge of mapped space, past the furthest assembly outposts, into a region where even the most advanced sensors showed nothing but empty void. Stood on the bridge of the transport ship Defiance, watching the navigation display with growing unease. They had been traveling for 6 days since leaving Meridian Station, and according to their instruments, they were heading toward absolutely nothing. Captain, Navigation Officer Torres reported, "We're approaching the coordinates, but I'm not reading anything out there. No planets, no stations, no artificial structures of any kind." Glanced at Doctor, who had remained on the bridge throughout their journey, monitoring equipment that looked nothing like standard human technology. "Doctor, are you certain these coordinates are correct?" "More certain than I've ever been about anything," Doctor replied without looking up from her strange instruments. 3 minutes to arrival." As if her words were a signal, the ship's communication system suddenly burst to life with incoming transmissions. Not one or two, but dozens of them, all using authentication codes had never seen before. The voices speaking were human, but they carried accents and inflections that seemed somehow different, as if shaped by decades of isolation. "Transport Defiance, this is Control Station Alpha. Please reduce speed and prepare for escort." His eyes widened as her sensors finally began picking up energy readings. Massive ones, and they were getting stronger by the second. "Doctor, what exactly are we approaching?" "The future of humanity," Doctor replied simply, "and it's past." The flickered and then displayed something that made breath catch in her throat. Ships were appearing around them, not materializing like they had broken through hyperspace, but literally becoming visible as if they had been cloaked. And they were unlike any vessels had ever seen. The ships retained recognizable human design elements, but they were wrong in ways that made her brain struggle to process what she was seeing. They were too sleek, too organic-looking, with hulls that seemed to shimmer and shift in the starlight. Energy patterns flowed along their surfaces like living veins, and their engines produced no visible exhaust trail despite clearly generating enormous power. "Those ships, they're human?" asked, though she could barely believe the words as she spoke them. "Very human, just not the humans the galaxy thinks they know." Doctor finally looked up from her instruments and saw something in her eyes that she'd never seen before, pride mixed with fear. "Captain, I need to tell you something that will sound impossible. 15 years ago, a group of human scientists made a discovery that changed everything. We found ruins." "Ruins? You mean alien ruins? Where?" "In the asteroid field around 442, the same field where you built Meridian Station." Doctor moved to the gesturing at the ships surrounding them. "But they weren't alien ruins. They were human ruins, hundreds of thousands of years old." Felt like the deck had shifted beneath her feet. "That's impossible. Humans haven't existed that long as a spacefaring species." "Haven't they?" Doctor's smile was enigmatic. "What if everything we thought we knew about human history was wrong? What if humanity didn't evolve on Earth? What if Earth was just where we retreated after losing a war that nearly destroyed us?" The implications hit like a physical blow. "You're saying we're not originally from Earth?" "I'm saying the evidence suggests that humanity once controlled a significant portion of this galaxy, and that something happened, something catastrophic, that forced our ancestors to abandon their empire and flee to a small blue planet on the galactic rim." Doctor's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "The ruins we found contain technology so advanced that we still don't understand most of it, but we understood enough." One of the escort ships had moved close enough that could see details of its construction through the hull material looked almost biological, as if it had been grown rather than manufactured. And the energy readings her sensors were picking up were off the charts. "The assembly never knew about the ruins," Doctor continued. "We made sure of that. For 15 years, we've been slowly studying the technology, reverse engineering what we could, and preparing for the day when we might need it. When the assembly forced us to develop defensive systems, we used the ruins technology as a foundation. When they demanded we limit our expansion, we secretly used that technology to build hidden facilities in places they would never think to look." His mind raced, trying to process everything she was hearing. "You're telling me that for 15 years, humanity has been secretly developing advanced ancient human technology. Not just developing it, mastering it, and not just humanity on Earth, but breakaway colonies that were established specifically for this research. Colonies that the Assembly never knew existed because they were built using cloaking technology we found in the ruins. The Defiance was now completely surrounded by the strange ships, and could see that they were being guided toward something massive. As they drew closer, her sensors began to resolve what looked like a space station, but one unlike anything she had ever imagined. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and it seemed to pulse with its own internal light. "Welcome to Haven," Doctor said, "humanity's secret capital." As they docked with the massive station, found herself part of a procession that seemed both familiar and alien. The corridors they walked through were clearly designed for humans, but the technology integrated into the walls and ceiling was unlike anything she had seen before. Lights that responded to their presence, air recycling systems that seemed to function without any visible machinery, and computer interfaces that appeared to be operated by thought rather than touch. "How many people live here?" asked as they passed through what looked like a residential district. She could see children playing in parks that existed inside a space station, families going about their daily lives as if living in the void between stars was the most natural thing in the world. "Haven houses about 2 million permanent residents," Doctor replied. "But it's just one of 17 facilities we've built using the ancient technology. In total, we've managed to evacuate and relocate nearly 12 million humans to these hidden installations." Stopped walking. 12 million, but that's almost half of all humans living outside Earth system. "Exactly. For years, we've been quietly identifying individuals and families who showed particular aptitude for the advanced technologies we were developing. Scientists, engineers, military personnel, teachers, doctors. All the people humanity would need to rebuild civilization if the worst happened. We offered them opportunities to relocate to research facilities and colonies that offered better pay and more advanced equipment than anything available in assembly space. They entered an elevator that seemed to move both vertically and horizontally through the station's structure. Watched through transparent walls as they passed through massive chambers filled with what looked like shipbuilding facilities, research laboratories, and training centers. "We never told them the whole truth," Doctor continued. "Most of them believed they were working on classified human projects funded by Earth's government, which was technically true, just not the whole truth." The elevator stopped, and they emerged into what was clearly a command center. But unlike any command center had ever seen, this one seemed to be directly interfaced with the people operating it. Technicians sat in chairs that appeared to grow around them, connecting them directly to the station systems through neural interfaces. Holographic displays filled the air around them, responding to their thoughts rather than their touch. "Captain," a voice called out, and turned to see Admiral Harrison approaching them. But this wasn't the Harrison she had spoken with during the evacuation. This man looked younger, stronger, and his eyes held a clarity and confidence she had never seen before. "Admiral, but you were on Earthwind." "When I spoke to you from Earth?" "Yes, I was. That conversation took place in real time, but I was speaking to you from this facility. We've had quantum communication networks connecting our hidden installations for over a decade." Harrison gestured around the command center. "What you're seeing here is the result of 15 years of the most intensive technological development in human history. We've taken the ancient technology we found and combined it with human innovation and determination." Looked around the command center, finally beginning to understand the scale of what she was seeing. "This is why you weren't really worried about the Assembly's ultimatum." "Worried? We've been hopping for it. The Assembly has been holding humanity back for decades, treating us like children who need constant supervision. They've limited our expansion, regulated our technology development, and forced us to share our scientific discoveries while keeping us locked out of their most advanced research." Harrison's expression hardened. "But more than that, they've been actively working to prevent us from discovering our own history." Doctor stepped forward, activating a holographic display that showed what looked like archaeological data. "The ruins we found weren't the only evidence of ancient human civilization. There are traces scattered across the galaxy, always in remote locations, always carefully hidden or destroyed. When we started looking for them systematically, we discovered that the Assembly has known about them for centuries. They've been systematically destroying evidence of humanity's past." Stared at the display, seeing star charts marked with locations where evidence had been found and then mysteriously disappeared. Why would they do that? Because they know what we've finally figured out, Harrison said grimly. Humanity didn't just have an empire in this galaxy. We were the dominant species. The assembly itself was originally created as a governing body under human oversight, and something happened that forced us to abandon it all and retreat to Earth. The implications were staggering. Felt like everything she thought she knew about galactic history was crumbling around her. What happened? What could have forced humanity to abandon an entire galactic empire? We don't know yet, Doctor admitted. But we're going to find out, and we're going to make sure it never happens again. Harrison moved to the center of the command center and noticed that every person in the room was now paying attention to him. Captain, you're here because you've been selected for a critical mission. In 18 hours, the assembly deadline expires. When they discover that humanity didn't retreat to Earth as expected, they're going to come looking for us. Looking for us, but these installations are hidden. Hidden from their current technology, yes. But the assembly has resources we don't fully understand, and they've had centuries to prepare for the possibility that humanity might someday discover its true heritage. Harrison's voice took on a tone of deadly seriousness. When they come looking, we need to be ready not just to hide, but to fight back. Felt a chill run down her spine. You're talking about war with the Galactic Assembly. I'm talking about reclaiming humanity's rightful place in this galaxy, Harrison corrected. The Assembly cast us out because they're afraid of what we might become. They're right to be afraid. But what they don't realize is that we're not becoming something new. We're remembering something old. Doctor activated another display, this one showing ship designs that made breath catch in her throat. They were human vessels, but built using the advanced technology they had discovered. Ships that could cloak themselves not just from sensors, but from reality itself. Ships that could manipulate space and time to travel faster than anything the Assembly possessed. Ships that could project weapons that appeared to bend the very laws of physics. Your mission, Captain, is to take command of the first ship built entirely using the ancient technology. You're going to lead a reconnaissance mission back into Assembly space. Not to attack, but to observe. To let them know that humanity is still here and that we're no longer playing by their rules. Looked at the ship designs, then back at Harrison and Doctor. And if they decide to escalate, if they try to hunt us down? Harrison's smile was cold and predatory. Then they're going to discover that casting humanity out of the galaxy was the worst mistake in the history of galactic civilization. We've spent 15 years preparing for this moment. We're not running anymore. As stood in the command center of Haven Station, surrounded by technology that seemed like magic and facing the possibility of a war that could reshape the galaxy, she realized that Doctor had been right. Humanity's expulsion from the Assembly wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. And when the galaxy next encountered humanity, it would be on humanity's terms. Ship they gave every principle of engineering she thought she understood. Standing in its central command chamber, she felt more like she was inside a living organism than a spacecraft. The walls pulsed with veins of energy that responded to her presence, and the control surfaces seemed to anticipate her needs before she even approached them. The Prometheus represents the culmination of 15 years of research, Doctor explained, running her hand along a console that rippled like water at her touch. We've integrated ancient human technology with modern human engineering. The result is something that the galaxy has never seen before. Tried to maintain her composure, but the ship was unlike anything she had ever experienced. When she placed her hand on what appeared to be the captain's chair, it molded itself to her body while thin tendrils of light connected to points along her spine and the base of her skull. The sensation was strange but not unpleasant, like being welcomed home by an old friend. Neural interface? She asked, though she could already feel the ship's systems becoming accessible to her thoughts. More than that, this ship bonds with its captain. It learns your preferences, your decision-making patterns, your instincts. Within a few hours, you'll be able to control every system on the ship as naturally as moving your own arm. Through the ship's sensors, could feel rather than see the other vessels that would make up their reconnaissance fleet. 5 ships in total, each one a masterpiece of ancient technology restored and enhanced by human ingenuity. Their crews had been training for this mission for months, preparing for the moment when humanity would announce its return to the galaxy. Captain, the voice belonged to Commander Sarah Mitchell, second in command, and one of the few people who had been fully briefed on the mission's true scope. All ships report ready for departure. Nodded, settling deeper into the connection with her ship. Through the Prometheus sensors, she could see Haven Station growing smaller behind them as they moved away from humanity's hidden stronghold. But she could also sense something else. Other ships, hundreds of them, moving throughout this region of space that the Assembly believed was empty. Doctor, exactly how large is humanity's secret fleet? Larger than you might think, smaller than we need, Doctor replied diplomatically. We've been building ships for 10 years, but each one requires components that can only be manufactured using the ancient technology. We're limited by production capacity, not by resources or knowledge. Absorbed this information while simultaneously directing the Prometheus through a series of system checks. The ship's responses were instantaneous and intuitive, as if it could anticipate her commands before she gave them. She had never experienced anything like the neural interface technology. Our first destination is the Rigel sector, announced to her fleet. Assembly intelligence indicates they've established a new monitoring station there, specifically designed to detect cloaked vessels. We're going to test our stealth capabilities. The journey to Rigel would take them through the heart of Assembly space, past dozens of alien worlds and space installations. It would be humanity's first test of whether their ancient technology could truly hide them from the galaxy's most advanced detection systems. Engaging phase drive, commanded, and felt the Prometheus respond immediately. What happened next challenged every assumption had about space travel. Instead of the familiar sensation of acceleration, she felt reality itself shift around the ship. Stars didn't streak past in lines of light. They simply became somewhere else. The ship moved through space by convincing the universe that it had always been in its destination rather than its origin. Phase drive operational, reported Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. Estimated arrival at Rigel in 4 hours, 17 minutes. Had read the briefing materials on phase drive technology, but experiencing it firsthand was entirely different. Through her neural connection with the ship, she could sense that they weren't just hidden from enemy sensors. They were existing in a slightly different dimension of spacetime, parallel to normal space but not quite touching it. Captain, Doctor approached her command chair, her expression serious. There's something else you need to know about this mission. We're not just testing our stealth technology, we're also delivering a message. Felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of message? The kind that will make the Assembly realize that humanity is no longer bound by their rules. Doctor activated a holographic display showing Assembly military installations throughout the Rigel sector. These monitoring stations aren't just looking for cloaked ships. They're part of a network designed to detect and track any technology that doesn't conform to Assembly standards. Studied the display, noting the positions of the monitoring stations and the patrol routes of Assembly security forces. They're specifically looking for advanced human technology. They've been looking for it for decades. The Assembly has always suspected that humanity was developing capabilities beyond what they officially reported. These stations are designed to catch us if we ever decided to reveal what we're really capable of. The implications were clear. This wasn't just a reconnaissance mission. It was a declaration of independence. When the Prometheus and her sister ships appeared in Assembly space using technology that couldn't be detected by their most advanced sensors, it would announce to the galaxy that humanity was no longer playing by the old rules. 4 hours to Rigel, murmured, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. In 4 hours, she would either prove that humanity could operate independently of Assembly oversight, or she would trigger a conflict that could destroy everything her species had built among the stars. The transit to Rigel passed faster than expected. The neural interface with the Prometheus allowed her to experience space travel in ways she had never imagined. She could feel the gravitational fields of nearby stars, sense the quantum fluctuations of spacetime itself, and detect energy patterns that normal sensors couldn't even register. Approaching Rigel sector, Torres reported. Assembly monitoring station is exactly where intelligence indicated. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, could see the monitoring station clearly. It was a massive construct, easily the size of a small city, bristling with sensor arrays and detection equipment, and it was scanning space around it with an intensity that made teeth ache. They're definitely looking for something specific, she observed. Those sensor sweeps are designed to detect cloaked vessels using technology patterns consistent with the ancient ruins we found. Doctor nodded grimly. The Assembly has known about the ruins for centuries. They've been preparing for the day when humanity would finally access that technology. Directed the Prometheus closer to the monitoring station, testing the limits of their stealth capabilities. To her amazement, the ship remained completely invisible to the station's sensors even as they passed within a few hundred kilometers of its outer hull. "This is incredible," she whispered. "We're completely invisible to them." "Not just invisible," Doctor corrected. "We exist in a quantum state that their sensors can't even detect. As far as their instruments are concerned, we're not here at all." Was about to order her fleet to proceed to their next waypoint when her sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. Ships were approaching the monitoring station, lots of them, and they were moving with the kind of precision and coordination that spoke of military operation. "Captain," Mitchell called from her station, "I'm reading massive energy buildup from those approaching vessels. They're not here for a routine patrol." Expanded her sensor range, trying to get a better picture of what was approaching. What she saw made her heart skip a beat. The ships were unlike anything in the Assembly's known fleet. They were organic-looking, with hulls that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and they radiated energy patterns that her instruments couldn't identify. "Doctor, are those ships using technology derived from the same ruins we found?" "I don't think so," Doctor replied, her voice tight with concern. "I think we may have just discovered who originally drove humanity from this galaxy." The approaching ships reached the monitoring station and immediately began some kind of scanning procedure. But unlike the passive sensor sweeps the station had been conducting, this was active and aggressive. Could feel the scanning beams passing through space around them, searching for something specific. "They're looking for us," she realized. "Not for human ships in general. They're specifically looking for ships using ancient human technology." "Captain," Torres called urgently, "those ships are broadcasting some kind of signal. It's not in any language in our databases, but the translation matrix is trying to process it." Listened as the ship's computer systems struggled to decode the alien transmission. When the translation finally came through, it sent ice through her veins. "Attention, ancient enemy, we know you have returned. We have been watching. We have been waiting. The exile ends now. Prepare for final solution." Stared at the display, feeling the weight of galactic history settling on her shoulders. Whatever had driven humanity from this galaxy thousands of years ago, it was still here, and it had been waiting for humanity's return. "All ships," she commanded, her voice steady despite the fear racing through her mind. "Maintain stealth and prepare for immediate withdrawal to Haven. We need to report this to Admiral Harrison immediately." But as the Prometheus began to turn away from the monitoring station, caught something on her sensors that made her pause. The alien ships weren't just scanning for human vessels. They were destroying the Assembly monitoring station. "They're eliminating the Assembly's ability to detect us," she realized. But why would they do that? Doctor's expression was grim. "Because they don't want the Assembly to interfere with what they're planning to do to us." Watched in horrified fascination as the alien ships systematically destroyed the monitoring station and its entire crew. The attack was swift, efficient, and completely merciless. Within minutes, nothing remained but expanding clouds of debris. "Captain," Mitchell called, her voice tight with tension. "Long-range sensors are detecting similar attacks throughout Assembly space. Every monitoring station designed to detect advanced human technology is being destroyed simultaneously." Felt the full implications of what she was witnessing crash over her like a tidal wave. The beings who had driven humanity from the galaxy centuries ago were still here, still watching, and they had just eliminated the Assembly's ability to detect or track human movements. "They're clearing the board," she whispered. "They're removing all the pieces they don't need for whatever they're planning." Through her neural connection with the Prometheus, could sense her crew's growing fear. They had come here expecting to test their stealth capabilities against Assembly technology. Instead, they had discovered that humanity's ancient enemies were still active, still hostile, and apparently preparing for some kind of final confrontation. "Set course for Haven," ordered. "Maximum phase velocity. Admiral Harrison needs to know that we're not just dealing with the Assembly anymore." as the Prometheus and her sister ships from Rigel's sector couldn't shake the feeling that they had just witnessed the opening moves of a war that had been postponed, not ended, thousands of years ago. Humanity's exile was indeed coming to an end, but not in the way anyone had expected. The ancient enemy had returned to finish what they had started, and this time there was nowhere for humanity to run. Spent the journey back to Haven analyzing every piece of data they had collected about the alien ships and their coordinated attacks. The more she studied their technology and tactics, the more convinced she became that these beings had been watching and waiting for centuries, preparing for humanity's inevitable return to the galactic stage. "Doctor," she said as they approached Haven's coordinates, "I need you to be completely honest with me. How much did the research teams know about these aliens when they started studying the ruins?" Doctor was quiet for a long moment, staring at the sensor readings from their encounter. "We found evidence of a great war in the ruins. Planetary surfaces that had been burned from orbit, space installations that showed signs of having been destroyed by weapons we couldn't identify. We knew that something catastrophic had happened to ancient human civilization." "But you didn't know the enemy was still active." "We hoped they weren't. The evidence suggested that whatever conflict drove humanity from the galaxy had ended with the destruction or departure of both sides." Doctor's expression was troubled. "It appears we were wrong about that." As Haven Station came into view, could see that word of their discovery had already reached Admiral Harrison. The station's defensive systems were active, and she could detect numerous ships moving throughout the surrounding space. Humanity's secret installations were preparing for war. "Prometheus, this is Haven Control. Admiral Harrison requests your immediate presence in the Strategic Command Center upon docking." Acknowledged the transmission and guided her ship toward the station's docking bays. As she did, she caught sight of something that made her pause. New ships were being moved out of Haven's construction facilities, vessels that looked even more advanced than the Prometheus. Humanity was accelerating their military preparations. "Doctor," said quietly, "when Admiral Harrison told me that the galaxy casting us out was the worst mistake in galactic history, was he talking about the assembly? Or was he talking about our real enemies?" Doctor's smile was cold and determined. "Captain, I think you're about to find out that humanity has been preparing for this war a lot longer than 15 years. We've been preparing for it since the day our ancestors first landed on Earth." The Strategic Command Center at Haven had been transformed in the hours since departure. What had been an impressive but relatively calm facility was now a hive of intense activity. Holographic displays filled every available space, showing star charts, fleet movements, and tactical analyses that painted a picture of galactic-scale conflict preparation. Admiral Harrison stood at the center of it all, but he was not the same man had known for years. The weight of hidden knowledge had been lifted from his shoulders, replaced by the focused intensity of a military commander preparing for the most important battle in human history. "Captain," he greeted her as she entered the chamber, "your reconnaissance mission has confirmed our worst fears and validated our most optimistic preparations." Approached the central display, which showed the locations of all the destroyed assembly monitoring stations. Red markers indicated sites where the alien ships had struck, and the pattern was clear. Every single installation designed to detect advanced human technology had been eliminated. "Admiral, who are we really fighting here? These aliens, they knew exactly where to strike. They've been planning this for a long time." "Longer than you can imagine," Harrison replied grimly. He activated a new display that showed historical data dating back thousands of years. "Captain, what I'm about to tell you is known to fewer than a dozen people in the galaxy. The ruins that Doctor's team discovered weren't just evidence of ancient human civilization. They were archives, detailed records of humanity's first galactic empire and the war that destroyed it." Studied the historical data flowing past on the displays. Star charts showing human territory that had once spanned half the galaxy. Population centers that had housed billions of humans. Industrial complexes that had manufactured technology beyond anything currently available to galactic civilization. "We were the dominant species in this galaxy for over 50,000 years, Harrison continued. "Earth wasn't it was a research station on the galactic rim, and then they came." "They?" Doctor materialized beside, her face grave. "We call them the Devourers, though their real name is unpronounceable by human vocal cords. They're not from this galaxy. They're extragalactic invaders who have been moving from galaxy to galaxy for millions of years, consuming advanced civilizations. Felt a chill run down her spine. Consuming. Not literally, Harrison clarified. They don't eat civilizations. They study them, learn from them, and then either destroy them or force them into exile. They're knowledge parasites, feeding off the technological and cultural achievements of other species. A new display appeared, showing what looked like ship designs, but unlike anything had ever seen. The vessels were organic, flowing, with no clear distinction between technology and biology. They seemed to shift and change even as she watched. The Devourers conquered most of this galaxy over the course of 1,000 years, Doctor explained. But humanity fought back. We were the only species that managed to develop technology that could match theirs. The war lasted for centuries, and it nearly destroyed both civilizations. Stared at the display, trying to comprehend the scale of conflict being described. What happened? How did it end? It didn't end, Harrison said quietly. It was interrupted. Humanity developed a weapons system that could have destroyed the Devourers completely, but using it would have required sacrificing most of our population and turning large portions of the galaxy into lifeless zones. Our ancestors chose exile instead. They chose to abandon the galaxy rather than commit genocide. They chose to preserve both civilizations by removing the conflict. Humanity to Earth and other rim worlds, erasing most evidence of our galactic empire. The Devourers retreated to the galactic core, apparently believing that humanity had been destroyed. Began to understand the true scope of what was happening. But now we're back, and they know we're back. More than that, Doctor added. We've been developing the same technologies that made us a threat to them before. The neural interface systems, the phase drive technology, the quantum manipulation capabilities. We're rebuilding the weapons and tools that nearly defeated them centuries ago. Admiral Harrison activated another display, this one showing real-time tactical information from across the galaxy. The Devourers have spent the last few hours eliminating the Assembly's ability to monitor our movements. They're not doing this to help us. They're doing it to ensure that when they come for us, there won't be any witnesses. Studied the tactical display, noting the positions of Devourer fleets throughout Assembly space. The aliens were moving with precision and purpose, clearly working from a plan they had developed long ago. How long do we have? Our analysis suggests they'll begin their assault on human territories within 72 hours, Harrison replied. Earth's system will be their primary target, but they'll also strike at every human installation they can locate. What about these hidden facilities? Can they find Haven and the other stations? Doctor looked troubled. The ancient technology that hides us from Assembly sensors won't necessarily protect us from Devourer detection systems. They developed much of the technology we're using. They know its limitations better than we do. Felt the weight of galactic history pressing down on her. Humanity had faced this enemy before and chosen exile over extinction. But this time, there was nowhere to run. Admiral, what are our capabilities? How many ships, how many personnel, how much advanced technology do we actually have? Harrison gestured to a technician who brought up a comprehensive inventory display. The numbers were both impressive and sobering. We have 17 major installations like Haven, each with populations ranging from 500,000 to 5 million people. Our total hidden population is approximately 37 million humans. His eyes widened. That was nearly double the estimate Doctor had given her earlier. Our fleet consists of 433 ships built using ancient human technology, ranging from reconnaissance vessels like the Prometheus to battle cruisers that could challenge anything in the known galaxy. We have manufacturing facilities capable of producing advanced weapons and defensive systems, and we have something the Devourers don't expect. Which is? Harrison smiled, and for the first time since had known him, the expression carried genuine confidence. We have the complete technological archives from our ancient empire. Every weapon design, every tactical analysis, every strategic plan that made humanity the dominant force in this galaxy. Our ancestors didn't just choose exile, they chose preparation. Doctor stepped forward, her excitement visible. The ruins weren't just archaeological sites. They were time capsules, deliberately hidden by our ancestors to ensure that when humanity was ready to return, we would have the tools to reclaim our heritage. looked around the command center, seeing it now with new understanding. This wasn't just a hidden military installation. It was the restoration of humanity's galactic empire, rebuilt in secret and prepared for the return of their ancient enemy. But 37 million people, even with advanced technology, against an enemy that controlled most of the galaxy once before. Ah, Harrison said, his smile becoming predatory. That's where you're wrong about our numbers. 37 million is the population of our secret installations, but we've been preparing the rest of humanity as well. A new display appeared, showing the locations of human colonies throughout assembly space, colonies that knew had been evacuated during the recent exodus. The evacuation wasn't random. Every human installation received specific instructions on where to retreat and how to prepare for what was coming. Earth's system now contains not just the native population, but every human from the former assembly territories. Over 400 million people, all concentrated in the most heavily defended system in human space. Began to see the scope of humanity's preparation. You turned the evacuation into a military consolidation. More than that, every evacuated human carried with them manufacturing specifications, resource stockpiles, and training programs for advanced technologies. In the past week, Earth's system has become the largest military-industrial complex in galactic history. Doctor brought up another display showing the solar system, but it was not the solar system remembered. The asteroid belt had been transformed into a massive shipyard. Jupiter's moons hosted manufacturing facilities that stretched across their entire surfaces. Mars had been converted into a fortress world bristling with defensive installations. 400 million humans working around the clock, using technology that the galaxy's dominant species thought had been lost forever, Harrison said. Humanity isn't just returning to the galactic stage, we're returning to reclaim our throne. Stared at the displays, trying to process the magnitude of what had been accomplished in secret. The assembly cast us out thinking they were removing a minor problem. Instead, they freed us to become their worst nightmare. The assembly was never our real enemy, Harrison replied. They were just in our way. The Devourers are our real enemy, and they've just reminded the galaxy why humanity was once the most feared species among the stars. A priority alert suddenly flashed across all the displays and saw the tactical situation change in real time. Devourer fleets were moving throughout assembly space, but they weren't heading for human territories as expected. Admiral, a technician called urgently, long-range sensors are detecting massive Devourer fleet movements, but they're not approaching Earth system. They appear to be retreating. Looked at the display in confusion. The alien fleets that had been positioning themselves for an attack were suddenly withdrawing toward the galactic core. They're running, she asked. Harrison's expression was grim. No, they're regrouping. They came here expecting to face the same humanity that fled the galaxy centuries ago, but our reconnaissance mission showed them ships using technology they thought had been lost. They know now that we've recovered our ancient capabilities. Doctor nodded slowly. They're not retreating. They're going back to get reinforcements. The Devourers just realized that the war they thought had ended centuries ago is about to begin again. Felt a chill run down her spine, and this time there's nowhere for either side to run. Harrison looked around the command center, his expression resolute. Captain, I want you to take command of our advanced fleet. 30 ships, our best crews, equipped with the most advanced technology we've been able to develop. What's our mission? We're not waiting for them to come back with reinforcements. We're going to follow them to the galactic core, and we're going to finish what our ancestors started centuries ago. Looked at the tactical displays one more time, seeing the scope of the conflict that was about to engulf the galaxy. Humanity had been cast out, forced into exile, and written off as a minor species by both the Assembly and the Devourers. They were all about to discover how wrong they had been. Admiral said, straightening to attention, "When do we begin?" Harrison's smile was cold and determined. "We already have. The war for the galaxy starts now." 6 months after the first encounter with the Devourers, stood in the command chamber of the Prometheus as it led humanity's most ambitious military operation in centuries. Around her, space itself seemed to bend and twist as 30 of humanity's most advanced warships moved through dimensions that normal physics couldn't explain. The pursuit of the Devourer fleets had led them through territories that no human had seen for. They had passed the ruins of worlds that had once housed billions of humans, space installations so massive they dwarfed entire star systems, and the skeletal remains of battles fought with weapons that could crack planets. "Captain," reported Commander Mitchell from her station, "long-range sensors are detecting massive energy readings from the galactic core. It looks like we've found what we were looking for." Merged her consciousness deeper with the Prometheus, extending her awareness through the ship's enhanced sensor arrays. What she sensed made her breath catch in her throat. The galactic core wasn't just the location of the Devourer home base. It was a construction site on an unimaginable scale. "Doctor, are you seeing this?" Doctor approached command chair, her face pale as she studied the sensor readings. "They're building something around Sagittarius A-star, something that's using the black hole's energy as a power source." Through the ship's quantum sensors, could make out the structure taking shape around the galaxy's central black hole. It was massive beyond comprehension, larger than entire star systems, and it was clearly nearing completion. "What is that thing?" Mitchell asked, her voice tight with concern. "It's a galaxy engine," Doctor replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "We found references to them in the ancient archives, but we thought they were theoretical. The Devourers are building a device that can manipulate the gravitational structure of the entire galaxy." Felt ice form in her veins. Manipulate it how? "They can compress space-time, accelerate stellar evolution, or—" Doctor's voice trailed off as the implications became clear. "Or destroy every star system simultaneously," finished. "They're not planning to conquer the galaxy this time. They're planning to consume it entirely and move on to the next one." Through her neural link with the Prometheus, could sense the fear and determination radiating from her crew. They had come here expecting to find a Devourer military base. Instead, they had discovered a weapon capable of ending all life in the galaxy. "Captain," called Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station, "I'm reading incoming vessels, lots of them." Expanded her sensor range and immediately wished she hadn't. Devourer fleets were converging on their position from every direction, hundreds of ships using technology that bent space around them like living things. But these weren't the same vessels they had encountered at Rigel. These ships were larger, more advanced, and they radiated power that made instruments struggle to process the readings. They brought their entire fleet, she realized. Every ship they have in the galaxy. Doctor said urgently, "We need to transmit what we found back to Admiral Harrison immediately, if the Devourers complete that galaxy engine." "Already done," replied, though her attention was focused on the approaching enemy fleets. "But we're not running, not this time." Activated the fleet communication system, her voice reaching the 30 ships that had followed her into the heart of enemy territory. "All ships, this is Captain. You can see what we're facing. The enemy has built a weapon that can destroy our entire galaxy. We came here to finish a war that started centuries ago, and that's exactly what we're going to do." Through her connection with the Prometheus, could feel the ship's weapons systems coming online. But these weren't conventional weapons. They were devices that her ancestors had developed specifically to fight the Devourers, weapons that could manipulate reality itself. "Prepare quantum torpedoes," she ordered. "Target the galaxy engine's power distribution network. If we can disrupt the energy flow from the black hole, we might be able to destabilize the entire structure." The first Devourer ships reached engagement range and got her first close look at their technology in hundreds of years. The vessels seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, phasing in and out of normal space as they moved. Their weapons fired beams of pure gravitational force that could compress matter into neutron-dense projectiles. "Engaging phase shields," commanded, and felt the Prometheus shift into a quantum state that made enemy weapons pass through them without effect. "All ships, advance on the galaxy engine. Ignore the Devourer fleets. Our target is that weapon." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Human ships using ancient technology fought Devourer vessels in a space where the laws of physics were more suggestions than rules. Weapons that could manipulate time fired at targets that existed in parallel dimensions. Ships phased through enemy attacks while firing torpedo spreads that could destabilize local spacetime. Fought the battle through her neural connection with the Prometheus, experiencing the conflict as if she were the ship itself. She could feel enemy weapons impacting her hull, sense her own weapons finding their targets, and experience the damage to other human ships as if it were happening to her own body. But gradually began to realize something that made her heart race. The human ships were winning. "Doctor," she called over the sound of weapons fire, "the ancient technology, it's more advanced than the Devourer's current capabilities. Our ancestors weren't just a threat to them. We were superior to them." "That's why they chose exile over extermination," Doctor replied, her voice filled with sudden understanding. "Our ancestors could have destroyed the Devourers completely, but they chose to withdraw rather than commit genocide." Guided the Prometheus through a complex series of maneuvers, evading Devourer weapons while targeting critical points on the Galaxy engine. Around her, the human fleet was systematically destroying the massive structure that would have ended all life in the galaxy. "Captain," Mitchell called urgently, "I'm reading a massive energy buildup from the Galaxy engine. I think they're trying to activate it." Could sense it too, power flowing from the central black hole into the incomplete weapon system. The Devourers were trying to trigger the device even though it wasn't fully operational, apparently hoping to cause enough damage to cripple human military capabilities. "All ships concentrate fire on the primary power coupling," ordered. "If we can sever the connection to the black hole, the weapon will be useless." The combined firepower of 30 human vessels, using weapons technology that had been lost focused on a single point in the Galaxy engine's structure. For a moment, thought their attack had failed. Then space-time itself seemed to buckle around the target area. The Galaxy engine didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. The disruption to its quantum matrix caused the entire structure to phase out of normal space, carrying with it a significant portion of the Devourer fleet that had been defending it. Stared at the sensor readings in amazement. "We did it! We actually did it!" But even as she celebrated their victory, she could sense something changing in the remaining Devourer ships. They were withdrawing, but not in defeat. They were pulling back to regroup, and could detect massive energy signatures from deep within the galactic core. "Captain," Doctor said quietly, "I don't think we've won. I think we've just forced them to reveal their true capabilities." Was about to ask what she meant when her sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. Ships were emerging from the galactic core, not dozens or hundreds, but thousands. And these vessels were unlike anything they had seen before, radiating power signatures that dwarfed anything in its experience. Doctor whispered, "I think we just met their advanced scouts. This is their real fleet." Stared at the sensor readings, trying to comprehend the scale of what she was seeing. The Devourer force approaching them was larger than anything that had existed in galactic history. It was a fleet capable of conquering entire galactic superclusters. But as she watched the massive force approaching, felt something unexpected, not fear but anticipation. Through her neural link with the Prometheus, she could sense similar reactions from her crew and the other human ships. They weren't terrified of facing impossible odds. They were eager for it. "All ships," announced, her voice carrying across the fleet, "prepare for Phase 2 of the operation. Transmit final data burst to Admiral Harrison and inform him that the Devourers have revealed their true strength." "Captain," Mitchell asked, "what are our orders?" Smiled, and through her connection with the ship, she could feel the Prometheus responding to her determination. "We're going to do what our ancestors should have done centuries ago. We're going to finish this war." As prepared for what might be humanity's final battle, she activated a communication system that reached not just her fleet, but every human ship and installation in the galaxy. When she spoke, her words were heard by the 400 million humans who had been cast out by the galaxy and forced to rediscover their own strength. "This is Captain of the Prometheus. We have engaged the enemy at the galactic core and discovered the true scope of their threat. They possess a fleet capable of destroying all life in our galaxy, and they have been preparing for this moment for centuries." Paused, looking around the command chamber at her crew, seeing the same determination in their faces that she felt in her own heart. "But we are not the same humanity they faced before. We are not the species that chose exile over extermination. We have reclaimed our heritage, restored our technology, and remembered who we were before the galaxy tried to make us forget." Through the ship's sensors, she could see the massive Devourer fleet approaching, weapons that could crack planets already charging for combat. "The galaxy cast us out, thinking we were weak. The assembly treated us like children who needed constant supervision. The Devourers believed we were broken remnants of a once great civilization. His voice carried across space to every human who could hear it, from the hidden installations to the fortress worlds to the evacuation fleets that had been scattered across the rim. Today, they discover what humanity becomes when we stop playing by other species' rules. Today, the galaxy learns why our ancestors were the most feared species among the stars. The first weapons exchanges began as the Devourer fleet entered combat range, but felt no fear. Through her connection with the Prometheus, she could sense the ship's eagerness for battle, its joy at finally being used for the purpose it had been designed for. Today, humanity takes back its throne. The battle for the galactic core began with weapons that could reshape reality itself, but knew that whatever happened in the next few hours, the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had returned not as refugees or exiles, but as the rightful heirs to galactic civilization. And this time, they were not leaving.